Hello, and welcome to the Vlogging Pod. Tonight we are joined by Carla Conti. Welcome to the room, Carla. How are you this evening?
I'm great, Ari. Thank you for having me and for the clapping. Canned.
Can't. I
Canned
tried.
clapping
I
is
tried.
better than no
Yeah.
clapping.
Right. Like I was telling my last guest, I have a soundboard over here. I only ever use the intro music and my clapping though, so I rarely get the chance to do all the other sounds. So I want to dive right into your book because it's very informative in a lot of ways, and it has some great context, and it's based on your part in the whole story, right?
Right. It is a true crime memoir. I mean, it blends genres, but it is told mostly in a first person perspective because it's what happened to me. And it is about a true crime story that took place over 10 plus years.
Mm. Now the book is called Chained Birds, and from what I understand, Scott Powell, who you went to school with, right?
Yep, my high school friend.
Oh, awesome. Now he brought you in on the case. Is that correct?
Right. Close to 12, 13 years ago, he was a public defender for an inmate at a prison in Lewisburg, Pennsylvania, who was charged with assault in a recreational cage. And this inmate wanted to tell the truth about the case and how he was set up by correctional guards and prison gangs, and was just determined to tell the truth and wanted to take the stand. So they decided they were going to trial. And my friend Scott was a little bit in over his head. He was all by himself as an attorney. He did not have a paid for investigator. He was trying to raise money for this inmate's defense to have a expert witness. So he reached out to me because I have a journalism background. And my first foray into this case was to write about his inmate, whose name was Kevin Sanders, and tell his story, put it on a website, and tried to crowdfund, raise some money for his
Mhm.
defense. That's how I got involved. And gradually, I ended up being part of the defense team, which I don't know how helpful I was. I was a researcher and I was organized, but then along came another attorney who sat first chair pro bono, and then the three of us made a pretty good defense team.
Oh. And how did that I'm assuming that changed your life dramatically.
Well, at the time, I didn't feel that that was the case. I mean, it was a way for me to help a friend. I was using some skills that I had as far as, journalism. I knew how to make websites. I covered the police beat and criminal courts as a reporter back in the day. So I knew how the whole system worked, and I just felt I was being useful. I didn't have employment at the time. My husband and my family and I, we had just come back from Europe from an expat assignment. So this
Mhm.
was a good use of my time. But as I got deeper and deeper into the case and became an advocate and a friend for the inmate at the heart of it, Kevin Sanders, it did become somewhat life changing because just Scott's and my connection with him as advocates and friends for him on the outside, just that relationship brought its own dangers because he was a wanted man by two different prison gangs, and it was a little scary.
Mm. Yeah, I can imagine. So now this was been some time ago, but it took you, what was it, 10 years to write the book?
It took me 10 years to write the book. there were many times along the way that I didn't feel it was the right thing to do, because he did have threats made, and his life actually was endangered twice by two different prison gangs. I was very leery of writing something that could lead people to him after he was released, because he would eventually be released. And I was worried about that. And then also, there came a time where Scott and I, Kevin felt we were directly threatened by having our information in an address book taken by one of the prison gangs. And he was very concerned that they would try to get a message to him by harming us. So it was a bit of a roller coaster over these years, where I was writing it, then I wasn't writing it. I was writing it, and I wasn't writing it. And even during the times that I wasn't writing it, I let Kevin think that we were writing it together, because it was a project that really helped him get through his days while he was behind bars, gave him a reason to get up in the morning and write me letters and write me stories and draw me pictures. He's a very talented artist, so he made a lot of art for the book. And, I was always very happy to have that be a project for his focus. And whether or not I turned it into a real book, I had to decide, could I do it or couldn't I? And I eventually decided enough time had gone by, and I was able to write it under a pen name, and by changing some of the names of the characters and some of the places for protection. Right. This is how I was able to end up coming to terms with it.
Now, one of Kevin's artwork is on the cover. Is that correct?
Yes, that is the chained bird. One of the very first pieces of artwork we got from him. It's a beautiful drawing of an eagle, that's just staring right at you. And the eagle's perched on a branch and has a chain around its ankle. And then the chain is attached to the branch, but the chain is broken. And the eagle actually could fly away, but it remains perched on that branch. And I was almost haunted by it, thinking, why don't you fly away? You're not chained to that branch anymore. But that kind of became a metaphor for many things in the book, and then, of course, played a role in the title.
Right. So I'm looking at the cover now as we speak. So I have some very enlightenment on that. I can see it right here in front of me. Mm-hmm. One of the other things that's on your cover is that you have the best thriller. You were a finalist on the bestthrillers.com book award.
That was my first book award that I got, and that came just like within a couple of weeks of the book's launch, which was 1 week after the election last year in November 2024. And I have gone on to get a handful of independent book awards. I actually got a first place award from Feathered Quill for their debut author. And I've been shortlisted for some other ones, and there might be some more coming, because book award season isn't over. So I'm collecting stickers, as they say.
Oh, congratulations.
Thanks.
So what is since you were on the team itself, what has been the most remarkable thing that you learned just from court cases? What stunned you the most to learn in your connection with the court cases?
I was really surprised, and it was so enlightening to see the disadvantage that the defense has in federal court, in particular, against the government, where they have, practically unlimited resources, just the way that they handle evidence and witness lists, and how the balance of power really leans toward them. I mean, especially for defense clients who are representing indigent clients, defense attorneys, they don't get funding because it's taxpayer dollars. The judges are very unwilling to give funding for things like expert witnesses and allow you to hire private investigators the way the other side can, or the way a paying client can. It was very illuminating.
Yeah, it is. I remember, this has been some time ago, but I was very in depth, and of course we know more has happened, but my first experience to the court cases was back with O.J. Simpson. I
Mm,
really got involved in that whole case. And then of course, all the ones that we know, the celebrities and stuff like that, the ones that really make the pages. So I think a lot goes missed by just the regular people in general from day to day that we miss out of the court systems if we're not truly involved in true crime. Would you say
right.
your would you say your interest in because of you were involved in this case has your interest toward true crime as far as books, podcasts, has that been increased or do you find yourself pulling more away from it nowadays?
I have always been a true crime consumer
Mhm.
of, books,
Mm.
podcasts, documentaries, TV shows, anything like that. And that's remained pretty steady. I have almost a desire to write something maybe that's not so bloody and gory. But all of that interest in true crime sprang out of my years as a journalist and covering the police beat and criminal courts. So that just, I think, was a natural, um, tendency from that perspective. But true crime is a really, really popular genre in all media, and women consume most of the true crime in this
Mm,
country
yes.
in whatever form. And it's really interesting. They've done psychological studies on this. And for a lot of women, they can either identify with the victim or it's almost like therapy for them to look at a victim and say to themselves, oh, well, this is going to happen to her because she did this. And if I were in that situation, I wouldn't do that. So that wouldn't happen to me.
Mm.
Or they learn something like, how one victim got away from the perpetrator, etc. It's really fascinating.
That is, when I've watched shows, even crime related and stuff like that for movies or interests, we always stand back and we think, "Oh, I would do that. I would do this." And one thing I learned, granted, I haven't been touched by crime as some people have, but I have had, as a woman, most of us have been affected by, um, I question my wording here, but I'm just going to say assaults. And
Sure.
when I've had a few times in my life where I have been, and I always thought that I would do this or I did that. And the time that I was assaulted, I actually stood in fear, and
Hmm.
it became something I didn't want to talk about with people. It wasn't years until years after that I actually said anything about it. I wasn't able to move. It was just fear. So I think until you're in those positions, it's very hard. For me, it was disbelief. Like, I cannot believe this has happened to me, and I was so stuck in that moment. It was hard
Mm.
to move forward.
I cannot imagine. I mean, you were just very brave to survive that and deal with the fallout. A lot of women will see a show about an assault, and somehow it's like rehearsal or practice for them because they worry that they will be a victim like this. And
Mhm.
they see the different ways that people can either fight back, or what didn't so and so do. Maybe if I'm in that situation, I would try this. It's all part of the psychological component of where we women are, because we are the more vulnerable sex, right? And then
Mhm.
how that just plays out in the true crime genre.
Yes, it is very scary, and you just don't realize it's different to sit back and watch it, and then be a part of it is totally different. aspect to your life. I think it just opens your eyes a lot more than you really probably ever wanted it to.
Yeah.
Um, Now you've written this book, and you've been a journalist. For how many years were you a journalist?
I really only was a paid journalist for maybe 5 to 7 years. And then I had my family and became a corporate wife, and then got involved in making websites and those kind of things. But I've remained a journalist at heart. So it wasn't hard to step back into those shoes to write this book.
Right. So now, have you have aspirations for another book? Is there one in
I
the works?
I do. I have a couple that I'd almost like to work on simultaneously, but one really should come before the other. I think I'm going to put together an addendum to Chained Birds with some extra stories that wouldn't fit
Hmm.
into the book. I've got quite a few stories that Kevin has written me about that really, I mean, the book was plenty long as it is. So this will be nice for people who wish they could hear more prison stories, like my nephew in particular. He said, I wanted more prison stories and less politics. I said, okay.
Mm,
So I can add that to the addendum, and also a lot of artwork. I can put that together, but it would be short, almost novella sized. And
right.
then there's another book that I have started researching that is somewhat related to Chained Birds. It's one of the characters that was mentioned early in the book, a Native American inmate named Leonard Peltier. He was imprisoned for almost 49 years for the murder of two FBI agents in an Indian reservation in 1975, in I think it was North Dakota. And he was just released. Joe Biden, made a flurry of pardons at the end of his administration, and Leonard Peltier was released to serve out the rest of his time at home in home confinement. So he wasn't exonerated per se. But that got me thinking that it's probably worth revisiting his case of the FBI agents. And there's actually a woman, Native American, who was murdered on the same Indian reservation, and Leonard Peltier's involvement in all three of those cases. I think it's time for a new look at those. And a whole new generation can learn about Leonard Peltier, who was really built up to be this hero, and has had a legacy. He was considered a political prisoner all the times that he was in prison. Many people thought he should not have been convicted, but there are differing opinions. So I'm looking forward to diving into that, and I think that would make a great book.
I think that's very interesting. I mean, just from what I've read of your of Chained Birds, I could really see your personal frustration, and your caring and commitment to not only Scott Powell as the legal attorney, but also Kevin. Do you feel a loss from being disconnected from the story this long?
No, I haven't had a connection with Kevin in quite some time. It's been well over 2 years since I last heard from him. So I don't really know his status. And I mean, we were friends for a very long time. He had some challenges when he was eventually released. And the book does have a bit of a cliffhanger, whereas we don't know his exact whereabouts and his exact status at the end of the book.
Uh,
So I do always wonder, will he become aware that this book was finally written? Although I've written it under a pen name, which he did not know what the pen name would be. So, he would really have to be aware that there was a book and then read it or hear about it to understand that
right.
he was the character. I guess if he saw the cover, he would know that was his artwork. So if he ever reaches out, or if I can find out more about him, maybe there would be a follow up to Chain Birds in that way. But I am still in touch with Scott. We talk
Mm-hmm.
pretty regularly, and it's been a good way of closure for me on kind of a difficult episode in my life that I just really couldn't get past fully until I put it down in book form. So, from that standpoint, I'm glad I've reached this point.
Well, it's interesting when you say that, when you put it down in book form, because you didn't just do that. You went on to do an Audible as well. So you had to re-dive into that. I know personally, I've done my own Audibles, a few of them anyways. But your story is different. I mean, I know all writers are connected to their stories, but you actually were there. So when you journeyed down the Audible road, when you read your book, because it is your voice, correct, to the book that you get
Yeah,
on?
it
Awesome,
is.
because
Yeah.
that is my next book in my Audible. Um, because I got my points, girl, and I'm gonna get it.
Oh, isn't it
Um,
fun to have those credits every month? I'm like, what book will I choose?
yeah,
I
and I
I
have
love audiobooks. That's how I
yes.
listen slash read most of my books. I don't know. How do you do it?
I love Audible. I'll be honest with you, it really helps me with my step count daily. And
Mm,
lately I'm struggling. I've been binge eating because of the world today, but we won't go down that road.
I
Um,
understand the stress eating. Yes.
yes.
Uh,
So I
but the
really go ahead.
Oh, I was going to say the Audible journey was really fun for me, and not something I entered into lightly, but I had discussions with my publisher, and we all agreed that if I could pull it off, a lot of readers like hearing a memoir in particular in the voice of the author. That transcends, other genres. Most authors don't read their own works unless it is has a memoir component to it. So I had a lot of help from a wonderful sound studio in Center City, Philadelphia, where I am
Mhm.
near, and a terrific sound designer. And he, as an engineer, just helped coach me, walked me through how to do it all, fixed mistakes. We worked on it over the course of an entire week, and he really made me sound pretty good.
Well, I'll give you a judge on that. I've got you in my
Yeah.
lineup already.
Okay.
So
Awesome.
you're in there. Basically, like I said, because I mean, granted, when I do my interview questions, I highlight, I go through, but I was really interested in just your your take on it. Because and I think that what really brought me into it is because that you were there and you gave it a journalist style, but a journalist who actually had an emotional context to it, which is very hard to find nowadays when you turn on the TV or you read an article to get that really personal connection to it.
Right. Yeah. I think a lot of books written by true crime writers or people with a reporting or a journalism background, they really try to maybe be more objective when they want to be subjective, and make it almost more dry journalism like.
Mhm.
I feel like I was fair. I told the truth, but I told it in the way that it affected me. And
Yes.
I've gotten all the feedback, the editorial reviews, the book awards. They all pretty much hone in on the fact that the voice was very impactful in telling the
Mhm.
story that way. And I don't know any other way to tell a story. People who know me, who've read the book, said it was just like talking to you, like you just told me the story. But I really don't know any other way to write. So I write the way I talk.
I I I can't say that. My writing, I never thought that there was anything different about my own writing, and people were like, so, but I can understand that, but I found your storytelling abilities, just from the bits that I've read, very compelling, very wanting to pull the reader into the book and find out more. I think the only sad part is the know that it's touching on reality.
Right, right. I've had a number of people say they had to keep reminding themselves that this was not like a thriller fiction story, that this really happened, but it read like a novel or read like a thriller, which is the highest compliment, right? Because
Yes.
I call it infotainment. You know, in order to have people learn something or understand something about the world that maybe they didn't even think they wanted to know, you have to entertain them to keep them turning that page to find out more. And at the end of the book, they may have been entertained and they learned something along the way.
As we end our interview tonight, what is the most thing that you want your readers to take away from this book? What would be the most poignant piece that you would wish that they would take away?
I think overall, my journey with this story centers on inmates who don't have a voice, who can be easily abused and marginalized, and things are swept under the rug, and most people just don't want to know what goes on um, behind prison walls. And my experience was only with a few of the federal prisons that my inmate character Kevin Sanders experienced. So not every prison is at all like how those prisons are depicted in my book, but I think we just need to do a better job with our criminal justice system and the penal system, and look toward our European and Scandinavian countries in particular as great models, better models for
Mm,
how to treat our prisoners, and the recidivism rates will be drastically lower. That's what I
yes.
hope will come out of it.
I find that very enlightful. I really do. I really love that statement. I'm actually writing that down.
Great.
I wanna thank you so much for being part of the program. I really enjoyed, diving deeper into your story, and again, I have it on my Audible, so that will be my read tonight.
Lovely. Well, it was great chatting with you. Thank you so much for having me on.
Anytime, anytime. I wanna thank our listeners tonight. Again, we were talking about Chained Birds from Carly Conti. Again, thank you so much for Carla for being part of our show. Thank you to our listeners. Until next time, bye-bye for now.